Ani, hello everyone. Ani, hello everyone. My name is Seraine Fox, and I am so thrilled to be here with all of you and our incredible panelists today. So thank you, Indigenous Tourism, and this is Indigenous Culinary Philosophies, and we're just gonna dive right in because I am so excited to start this conversation. I think food sovereignty and Indigenous culinary experiences and this idea of Canadian cuisine is so important to have Indigenous voices speak for themselves. So I'm not gonna take up too much time. I'm gonna jump right into it and introduce you to our incredible chefs we have here. Billy, why don't we start with you today?
Thank you, Ani, everyone. My name is Billy Alexander. I am Iroquois Mohawk from Akwesasne Nation. And today I'm proudly presenting from the traditional lands of Caldwell First Nation in Southern Ontario, Leamington. Thank you for having me, Miigwech.
Awesome, Miigwech. Joseph, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Ani, my name is Joseph Shawana. I am the chair for ICAN, the Indigenous Culinary Associate Nations, and also the professor at Centennial College, teaching their local sustainable course, as well as all their Indigenous learning curriculum in terms of culinary and storytelling.
Awesome, Miigwech. Tanya?
Okay. Sego Sego Guego, Tani Gajija Brand Younget, Swega Nidolado, Ginyang Haga no Hunjolo, Dano Wagineto, Dano Wagatini Jiga Iges. So my name is Tanya Brandt. I am from Six Nations Grand River Territory, and I am Mohawk Turtle, and it's just happy to be with here on this beautiful day. And I guess a little about myself, I'll be opening my restaurant on my home territory of Six Nations on Monday. So I guess that's big news in my little world. Thank you for having me.
That is big news. Awesome. Oh, and Trudy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Udlakut, Trudy Metcalf Ko Oyunga. My land claims region is Nain Nunatsiavut. I am a Nook, currently in Iqaluit Nunavut, but I do live in Ottawa, where I do catering and I do a lot of functions, focusing on Inuit culture and sharing some of the foods that we live on in the Arctic.
Awesome, Miigwech. Okay, so let's jump right into it. Feel free if you want to raise your hand because you want to just answer. You're like so excited about a question and we can go straight to you. Otherwise, we'll just rotate out and I'll help us through it. So guys, I want to know what Indigenous culinary experience or what it means to be an Indigenous chef specifically to you. And maybe that definition doesn't even fit. So describe what you do and how you want to be experienced as a chef. Maybe Trudy, we'll start with you.
So I started cooking as a young child at home with family and stuff like that. Most of my stuff has been done. I've been living in Ottawa for over 30 years and working within the Inuit community there, and being one of the only Inuit chefs in Canada. There are a couple of more that I know of, but they are in the Arctic. So in Ottawa, it was kind of like an exclusive thing. Fortunately, the food that I put together does taste good. So it's not like I'm just cooking and people are getting whatever I'm putting together. There is some flavor behind it, and there's some insight and thoughtfulness preparing the food that we gather from the land, which I wouldn't be able to do without hunters and trappers. I have had the lived experience of being able to hunt some food up here when I come up for vacations or work and stuff like that. So I've been narwhal hunting, seal hunting. I've fished for Arctic char. And I've also helped like butcher a bowhead whale and stuff like that. It's grueling work. So every time I do cook any of the country foods, so we call our foods country foods, the foods from the land. And it's primarily meat because, of course, living in the Arctic, there's not a lot that grows up here. There are a couple of months in the summertime where we might get some berries and stuff off the land, some of the lichens and things like that. Those I don't cook with too much because again, it's something that's very labor intensive, and generally when I'm cooking or presenting to groups of people, it's for several hundred people at a time. So it's not easy to go out and pick blueberries by hand for 500 people, for example. Um, but I do focus anything that I am doing around our culture. And in the last few years, we've been really, or I felt like I've been really taken under the wing of a lot of the First Nations events, because the Inuit, there's only about 60,000 of us across Canada. Not there's only about 5,000 in Ottawa. So when we have our gatherings and stuff, they're usually for our community. We invite outside people and stuff like that, but the First Nations groups are able to draw in like thousands of people, and have been very welcoming, and invited me into their events and their powwows and stuff like that. So without that, those connections, then I would probably, the Inuit part of it would probably be on a much smaller scale. So it's a really nice example of working in a group with the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, and all of us coming together and sharing what we have, and being excited to do it and enjoying it, and learning also. I work with some pretty amazing chefs at times when we with shared experiences, and yeah, it's just there's a lot to it, and it's all fairly, even though I've been doing it for about 25 years in Ottawa, it's been more the last 5 years where things have really grown and being a part of larger events. And you'll have to shut me up sometimes. If I'm passionate about something, then I can go on. So I don't want to take up everybody's space.
No, Indigenous style, I will never. So you take up all the space that you need. Let's just go in reverse. Thank you so much also. It's an awesome answer. Tanya, do you want to jump in on this one?
I don't really remember what the question was. Sorry.
What does Indigenous culinary mean to you, or what does it mean to be an Indigenous chef?
To me, it's just like I feel lucky, right? Like I feel very lucky to be able to share who I am, and be able to share that with other people. Yeah, I was just a chef, but having that ability to share who I am, it didn't really come till later in my career. Like I tell most people, like, yeah, I grew up traditional. We did stuff at home, but I just that's just what you did. It wasn't necessarily something I went out to be like, oh, I want to do that, or I want to be an Indigenous chef. It was just after a while, people started asking me things, or asking me to make stuff that, you know, were Indigenous, or what our idea of Indigenous foods are. And then this whole Indigenous food sovereignty movement started. And I really got into it after I became a mother. Just, when you're becoming a mother, you're reading so much about what you're doing, what you're putting in your body, what you're putting on your body, and how that's going to affect your children. And do you even want to give that to your children? So like most women, I've just started hating everything. So it makes you scared. You want to be that best person that you can be for your children. And when I started looking around, I realized that there's a ton of people that are doing this right now too, and they're doing it in their community. And it was really kind of isolating work. Like, we didn't know each other. We didn't know what people were doing in their community. So just to be in this space and time where it's all coming together is really exciting. And it's exciting to know that people support us and people are interested in it. And more importantly, that people want those foods, and they're seeing that the health benefits of the foods that we're working with. And I really do believe that it's going to change in the way we see our food in the future, and the way everyday Canadians, not just Indigenous people, and how they eat. And I really think that we have a positive message that's really going to help a lot of people, with their health, and benefit in more ways, like spiritually and mentally as well. And yeah, so for me, it was just kind of just kind of fell into it, I guess, where people started asking me more and more about stuff. But like I said, I grew up traditionally. My mom's, we just always had a garden. Like, I can't remember a time without having one. And I didn't ever think that would be such an important part, and affect every day of my life, right? Like, you don't think that when you're a kid. You're just like, do I have to go weed today? Like, do I? But that bounty is so amazing, and you see it in that energy you feel when you're in the garden amongst like the plants. And like I come from agrarian people where that's what we do, we grow. And like learning now more about harvesting, and that's, you know, we just go with our cycles, right? Like we just always tap the trees in the spring. That's what you do. You plant corn in the spring too. That's what you do. And um, I'm just really happy that other people are wanting to know and know more about that, because on top of that, just getting out and getting on the land is getting people out of their homes, off their screens, and getting them to participate more. And at the end of the day, it's only benefiting us, right? I don't see any negativity to anything that's happening. So yeah, I'll be opening a restaurant next week, so I'm pretty excited about that. To have my own commercial kitchen space. I haven't had that before. Being a caterer for the last few years since being a mom, it's kind of just on location cooking, and I'm really excited about not having to move so much equipment around.
Awesome. And I totally feel you about pregnancy and becoming a mom. I'm expecting myself and call myself a foodie. And it's so interesting, all the things I had to eliminate just from the things I love to eat. I was like, no fan. But yes, miigwech. All right, Joseph.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I really don't like to define myself as an Indigenous chef per se. Before anything else, I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I'm a community member. And the chef is just basically a title that I carried on what I experienced in the culinary field. But what makes me a chef that really defines what Indigenous food is learning the stories that are behind our foods, learning our history and our heritage through everything that we do, and working with great chefs alike. So I had the pleasure, and I still have the pleasure of working with everybody who's on the panel today. At some point, I did meet everybody here. Chef Bill is one of my good friends. I met Tanya a few weeks ago, or maybe about a month or so ago. We filmed a segment for a TV show. Trudy, I met in Ottawa, and Seren, you came to the restaurant with to film Future History. And so at some point we did work together, and it's all about this community environment. Indigenous people are really community based, and sharing knowledge across all spectrums is what we do. And whether it's just meeting for tea, or going out for dinner, or meeting up with your friends, or any types of family, you can share these stories, and the food ties into those stories, I believe, to the point where for me, I come up with recipes based on my own memories and based on what I encountered through life. And at the restaurant, we had this pine needle sorbet, and it really amplified a memory that I had of playing with my three best friends underneath the pine boughs and eating the snow crust off the ground. And I created a pine needle sorbet, and every time I eat that, it just brings back the memories of us being kids, of us having fun and not worrying about all the bad stuff that was going on in the communities and in our lives. We all had the same upbringing. We all come from the same place. We all pretty much live next door to each other. So creating those memories and working with elders and just trying to garner as much information as possible so we can pass it on to our younger generations. So I could pass this information on to my son, and he can learn. And it's a whole relationship thing with the land. Like, we grew up on the land. I went hunting, I went foraging, to the point where it wasn't work for me. It wasn't anything new, right? So it was just a way of life for us. We go out hunting in the fall. We get a few deer, we get a moose. We go fishing in the summer. We pack our freezers full as much as possible for the winter months. We eat as much, when we were kids. I remember eating this root we called Indian candy. I can't remember the correct name for it, and I've been looking for the correct name for it so I could find it again. And it tastes like licorice. So going in the bush and picking that root out and chewing on the root and having licorice flavor in your mouth. So all those memories, and it goes hand in hand with food. So being an Indigenous chef for me is, there's no way to describe it, right? So it's one of those things that you can't describe in one sentence in my mind. But I feel very honored and appreciated that there's non-Indigenous peoples wanting to learn our history through our food, and that's what I want to create on a plate, right? Is what our history on a plate interpreted by my life experiences and my stories.
Jamie Bish, that's awesome. And you made me have so many physical memories of food just from that. We have so many like blood memory boils from food in us. So thank you for that reminder. Billy?
Thank you. You know, so many great points made from my fellow panelists, and Joseph's right. Like, there's a deep connection here. It's funny. Joseph said a key point that made me think. Like, you know, I've always been appreciative of the title chef that goes along with all the years, and for a lot of us, for every one of us on this panel, with it, we were probably doing things as a chef or within the culinary career long before the shift kind of shifted to who we were as people. And I've always viewed myself as an Indigenous person, and the chef is something I chose to do. Where things changed a couple years ago was we realized really quickly that people were interested in what it was we did as a culture and community. And Indigenous cuisine for me is an option for us to kind of explain who we are regionally. And this is like really important, because I don't believe in this cookbook mentality that it's like we put this out and this is what Indigenous cuisine is. I believe that is what it is for maybe that person or that region or that family or that community. But I think it's really important to acknowledge that what we do within our communities is different depending on where we are. And there is no one true way to do something. And why that tends to be really important to recognize is because we are respectful people. We respect the way other people do things, and we respect the way we do things. And the reason that a lot of these things that we have learned and taught, as Joseph mentioned, as Tanya mentioned, that these become ways of life, is because they've been passed down from generation to generation. And I think what I've always chosen from the Indigenous side of things is to use food as a way to tell us and to tell our story, who we are. But the truth is for me, Indigenous cuisine is not just ingredients, it's a concept. It's a relationship to Mother Nature. It's our relationship to what's been provided. It's that I don't believe there's a such thing as a single use item in anything in our culture. Everything has multiple uses. Our food is often our medicine. And when we look at what we do to try to label what I think I get an opportunity to do is just feeding people, that's not it. It's a way to educate. Food for me becomes like this incredibly powerful conduit to share who we are as people within each of our communities and how we were raised and who we've always been. And I think the thing that I'm most motivated about is the emergence of Indigenous chefs being proud to share who they are. It is exactly the foundation in which this country was built on. And that deep history and this idea that Indigenous cuisine could possibly be the newest cool thing or a new fad, it truly makes me laugh, because I'm like, we've been around documented for at least 14,000 years. So this makes us the longest ranging fad in the history of what we know as Canada. So the truth is I'm motivated now that there's so many people telling this story of history. And for us, our history is who we are, and we get a chance to tell it through food.
Thank you, Billy. All of our panelists, thank you so much for those amazing answers. And Billy, I think you're touching on something really important here, and I think everyone mentioned it in some context, is this idea of identity versus labeling what we do. And I think that's an interesting discussion amongst all Indigenous, call it trades or careers, because what makes us who we are is our identity. And so can you separate that from what we do? So thank you for that. And I think we should dive further into this. So what is this idea of the Canadian culinary experience? Billy, you just brought up a really interesting notion that because we are the first peoples of this land, obviously our cuisine and what we do on the land is a part of the fabric, or should be the part of this fabric of what we call Canadian cuisine. So let's dive in. What do you guys think? Is there such thing? Or is what each and every one of you doing authentically Canadian cuisine? Or how do you answer this question when it comes up? Because it feels like it must have come up before. And before we dive in, just a quick reminder to enter your questions in the Q&A. We will have a Q&A session live at the end to answer your questions. So I see some of them coming in, don't forget. Is anyone really excited to dive into this? Raise your hand if you are.
Yeah.
All right, then. All right, Billy, go back at it.
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? Because it's almost like a chicken and the egg scenario. Like I actually haven't struggled with this question with it, because part of me thinks it's like really relevant and part of me thinks it's like really comical. Because I'll be honest, is it's like me trying to like fit into shoes that I wore a couple years ago, or I wore when I was a kid. I am proud that we are within Canada. I'm proud of what Canada is as a country, but it's really hard work to take ownership over ingredients. And that's something that I've strived like not to do in this aspect of like origin stories, because a lot of the misconceptions around the world on who invented what and who did what are really highly misquoted. What I will say with full confidence is this: it is easier for me to identify the things that have not been influenced by Indigenous cuisine or Indigenous heritage or Indigenous history than it is for me to name the few things that people think we are associated with, like Bannock. And this is where, when we dive into this like true history, and I really hope Joseph jumps in on this too, and from the pre-colonial aspect of these things, because is one big specialty that he does second to none, is these aspects of who came first and who did what. The truth is, like, we know this answer, and I have taken it from an aspect of being proud that I know in my heart that Indigenous things have influenced what Canada is today. That in my heart, Indigenous, who we are as people, has become the foundation to which Canada has been built. And I think now, hopefully, and we've seen progress in this, we're getting to a point where now Indigenous is starting to get the credit for those things that we have always known in our hearts. And this is a really important thing. And, Tanya can jump in on this and the cultivating, but these aspects of what we've been doing this forever. It's only just become interesting to everybody else recently.
So,
yeah, Trudy, Joseph,
yeah.
either one, you guys decide.
I'll let Trudy go first.
Okay. From an Inuit perspective, we've only had contact with this part of the Inuit land, of the Inuit regions anyway. I mean, it's just been over 100 years, even though we've been here for thousands of years. And again, like going back to what I mentioned before, it's like being in the Arctic, we don't have a lot of vegetables and herbs and things that grow, because it's just an impossible task. I mean, we're starting to bring in greenhouses and stuff like that. So when I think about our food being a part of Canadian culture, is we have been here for thousands of years. We've survived because of the food from the land. We didn't have vegetables and fruits and stuff like that. And when it comes to like Bannock, for the Inuit, it's a palauga. that was brought to us by whalers. We never had flour. We didn't have grains and stuff like that. And if I were to only cook and serve the food that we would have off the land, most people would literally be getting meat and fish. You wouldn't be getting any vegetables or anything else to go along with it. So, I mean, it's important, and that's part of where, when I'm working with some other Indigenous chefs and being able to incorporate some of the foods from the South or some of the foods from around the world. So a lot of when it comes to our foods, there is a lot of infusion. Otherwise, I mean, if I wouldn't be able to sustain any catering events without using all these other foods that I wouldn't have had before available to me. So it's and also just not cooking the same thing over and over and over again. I mean, I'm serving an audience. A lot of times it's the same individuals. So being able to be creative with things and putting more ideas out there.
Joseph?
Yeah, so there's a huge common misconception that Bannock, just since it was mentioned twice, a few times now, and that Bannock is Indigenous. In some ways, it is, just because we kind of, I guess, inherited the method of how to do it, and it was part of the flour and all that stuff was part of our rations in in the early days of colonialism, right? So so we adopted that type of bread in our diet, but in reality, there's nothing in that bread itself other than water that is indigenous to our diet. So I like to cook it at home. We like to eat it. Everybody does. Who doesn't, right? So but I've been continuing to work on recipes and just brainstorming ideas on what are the ground meals that we used to use for bread, and how do we make those types of bread, like all the way from birch flour to dandelion root flour, or even other stuff like this, all these tubular roots that we used, that we dried and then we ground ourselves, and using cornmeal and interpreting that into our diets and such. So in terms of our food and our whole diet is I strongly believe that our diet and our bodies are more acceptable to the cuisine that our ancestors ate. So, and more so on that point is when I first met Tanya in Pokagon, Michigan 2 years ago, we all ate pre-colonial foods. Like, we butchered a whole bison just right in front of everybody there. We used everything from that animal. And we had a whole elk come in and we used all of that. So I was there for 4 days and with me and my son. And when I came back, I lost weight, but I still ate breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I still ate as much as I did. But I came back a little bit more refreshed. My wife said that I looked better. My complexion was better. So that really changed my perspective on our foods. And when I was eating there, it was like you could feel your soul be satisfied by the food, that it was missing that nutrient, like the way the corn was processed on site, how it was dried, how it was lied, how it was cooked and milled, and we had this whole big coffee grinder come in so we can grind the corn into meal and flours and stuff. So it was a really good eye-opening experience for me, and it really opened the door to what our food really is, just by learning off all these other chefs. And while we were there, it was just like, it was very eye-opening. I wish everybody can attend something like that. Maybe something like that will happen closer, like after COVID is over. Crossing our fingers for that soon. But yeah, our food system is not complex. I always like to say we were doing paleo before paleo was cool, basically. So yeah, so it's the type of food that I cook. It's very simple and straight to the point. And I always just play off my memories, because that's where everything comes from. Playing off the memories of my grandmother cooking in the kitchen, or at powwows, or my mother cooking over the open fire in our backyard during our little family cookouts that we used to have. So all those memories and just the childhood memories and the experiences, life experience that I have associated with food, it really tells a story, tells my story. Because I only could speak for myself. I can't speak for anybody else and what they went through. So it tells my story on a plate, then interprets all the ingredients that I can bring in from coast to coast to coast, right? So
You got Tanya, do you want to join in on this one?
Yeah, sure. Just make sure I was unmuted. Yeah, like Joseph said, well, I mean, for me, the question about you know, our cuisine, Canadian, how does it affect it? It's easy for me. The answer, I'm not Canadian, right? And I'm Mohawk, so I'm got to be the First Nation to say we're not Canadians, we're allies to that crown. And everybody here is, you know, I love this country. I love Mother Earth. I love Turtle Island and everything she gives us. And like Joseph said, that our cuisines truly are just like, there are stories and all of our journeys are different and our influences are different. And most importantly, our palates are different. And the way that we learn that comes out in our cuisine, you'll see. And we're not limited, right? We're not limited to this is classic French cuisine or that's, you know, Italian, and we're really not limited, right? We're totally unlimited right now with what it is that we have, what it is that we have access to. And in starting those new flavors, I like to just challenge myself. Like I want to replace my spice cabinet, right, with you know, different spices that I'm work with now. And then like you get to taste them and try them and see how you know, it's like, what more can I do with this, right? And I'm really honored when every time I'm able to work with our products. And you know, I spend my whole life trying to squirrel away this this little pantry that I have, and you know, to have my own space now and have all that stuff together instead of a box here and some on the shelf there and the stuff I use every day and the special stuff for special occasions, you know, to have it and take it and have it all in one spot. It's really like inspiring to look back and like, wow, right? Like just to look at that shelf and you're like, man, that's awesome, right? Because I've never seen that before. And a lot of our everyday eating is just, it's not food, right? It's food type products, it's chemicals. And indigenous cuisine, it's so like it's from the earth and it still has that holisticness. And even in our growing, like we're, you know, a good wine has been used when that has been made, not chemicals and herbicides and pesticides, but it's true food that's been unadulterated. And like even working with wild game and stuff, like Joseph said, like I've attended food summits, and the first one I went to that really opened my eyes, it was probably about 4 years ago, and I was in Iowa, and it was 5 days, right? 5 days of pre-colonial foods, and like you said, butchering whole animals and stuff. And when I came home, not even like I wasn't even home yet, just stopping at restaurants on the way. But for about a week to 2 weeks after, every time I ate, I got sick, and I'm like, why? You know, I was like, I don't, I know I went through some kind of detox being there, just eating what it was that we were serving, but like it really made me think. I'm like, you know, what are we doing to ourselves, right? Like I think we have the best farms in markets and foods and ranchers and everything in Canada, right? I'm so proud to be from here, to know that our food sources and our regulations are up there and stuff, but it can still be better. We know it can still be better. And I think by Indigenous people joining that conversation, you know, we're opening up a whole new world. And everybody is interested in it, right? I've spoken with reps, like purchasers from the EU, and you know, just having people from like European countries, you know, like what's the country I'm thinking of? I can't think of it right now, like a Danish country, but just saying like they like our salmon more than they like their salmon, right? And just different stuff like that. So it's really encouraging to keep us going. And you know, and what is that Canadian cuisine, right? Because traditionally what you think of Canadian cuisine is, you know, things like poutine and what else do we think is Canadian? But either way, anyway, when where they come from is just they're all a lot of ingredients that are not from here, but they are from here. So it's really weird. So we're kind of connecting the dots for Canadians, right? Like, you know, to truly know like the land that they walk on is that food that they're eating is, you know, that's right outside my house, right? Like we should all be able to go outside and come back with a salad, and every child should be able to do that as well. And but you know, also there's the importance of harvesting and ethically harvesting, and how we're taught is, you know, you kind of pick every third thing because you have something for yourself, but you leave something for nature and for animals and other things that might need that, and you also leave one for creation to sustain itself and for regrowth. And I think that's the most important aspect of sharing and harvesting, because you know, it's unfortunate that even on First Nations territories, we find other people come and they'll wipe out something, right? They'll wipe out the wild ginger or ramps in a section, and you know that takes a decade to grow. Um, so there is really important work there that we have to teach others about how to sustain stuff that's going to sustain us for the future and for our children. Um, so yeah, I guess that's all I got to say on that right now.
Saigo. I think that, so I want to remind everyone to ask questions because we've only got a few more minutes left. I could talk to you guys all day, but this idea of storytelling, community, food as medicine, all of this is sort of the underlying fabric of what I'm hearing everyone talk about. And I think right now we're seeing a lot of young people who are interested in food sovereignty, who want to go to the sugar camps. They want to go to the hunt camps. They want to know how to sustain themselves. And I think it's top of mind right now for so many of us when we're talking about survival and how we keep our community safe. So I want to know, maybe we broaden it outside of the establishment, even outside of culinary experience. What do you imagine for our future as Indigenous people, as Indigenous chefs, having influence, or maybe just yourself in your own community? What is the future, or what are you inspired by in the Indigenous culinary space? And what do you think it's going to look like in maybe the next 10 years? Or what are you hoping for as an impact? Do you want to start, Tanya?
Here? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just excited for the future, right? And I'm excited for our people and Canadians both to learn about our new foods. And I just think, like, I think my food from like my tribe or nation, whatever you want to call us, like I truly think it's going to change the way we eat, right? Like our kids' diet isn't going to look like what it did for us, or even, you know, in the future is going to completely change. And it's going to be because those ingredients are allowed, right? They're allowed to be done in a good way because we have that voice now, right? There was a space and time we've never had that, and we were told everything that we did was wrong, and you know, you don't know anything and don't bother knowing or doing that because that's not how we do things. And so just in that space and time, in this one, that we have a voice and we can represent ourselves, and others can judge for themselves, because we're not in a space and time when we're told who and what we do and what we are anymore, right? We just, you're yourself and you do what you do. And I just think that there's going to be so much for Canadians to see and to learn right alongside with us. And I'm really encouraged, and we really got to encourage our producers and growers and harvesters, because they're the ones that really need some support just as much as we do. We need them to be able to do what we do, because, you know, we're only one person. I can't, like Trudy said, we can't forge everything that we have to, what we have to do. So that networking is happening. And I'm just really excited because I know in the future, you know, you're going to see Indigenous ingredients on grocery store shelves. And that's what I want to see in the future.
Yeah, and I have to agree with Tanya. I'm really, really excited because, you know, again, being one of the only Inuit chefs across Canada, being able to serve large groups of people, and being one of the only voices who can share the difficulties, the stories, the traditions, the things that I've learned throughout my experience, and just talking with elders and stuff like that. Having more voices out there to share that education, to share that knowledge, to share the excitement about the foods that we do have. It's a little more difficult for me when I'm in Ottawa. I can't go to the grocery store and buy caribou. I can't go to the grocery store and buy polar bear. So I really, really have to rely on the hunters and trappers in the smaller communities, because we also, there's no manufacturers up here. You know, there is a food processing plant in one of the communities, and if I have an event where need caribou for 500 people, I have to make a call and say, do you have enough caribou for 500 people? And they was like, sorry, no, we have no caribou. They haven't been able to hunt any. So, I mean, I have these challenges to face being an Inuit chef. And then, there are places in the South that farm caribou, but that goes against who I am. Part of what I do is to support my community. And I'm not going to use farm caribou because it also has a different taste than what I want to be using in what I'm promoting or what I'm doing. But also at the same time, I need to expand. So because if I have somebody like I've had events where I'm doing Inuit country foods, and then somebody will ask me, I was like, well, can you do something with wild rice? I was like, I can do a lot with wild rice, but that's not my specialty, and I don't want. Or someone wants me to do something with Three Sisters soup and stuff like that. It's like, well, no, I think if you want that sort of stuff to be a part of this, then we need to bring in a First Nation chef who has that. That's their foods, not my foods. I don't know how to cook them, and I don't want it to be a convenience. I can bring this, but I can't bring the stories behind it. So people need to be aware that when you're asking us to share, or when you want to hire us to cater to an event, I don't do it because of the money. I do it because of what I love to do and what I want to share. It's not just a business, a livelihood or something like that. I do it because it's a part of who I am. And if you want me to share who I am, but then also try and use me as a vessel to share who Joseph or Billy or who Tanya is, then I don't agree with that, because those are not my stories. So, yeah, I know them, I've heard them, I've shared in them, but they're not my stories to share. So I think working in groups and getting the education out there and being honest, like I had an event where somebody was trying some caribou stew, and the mother didn't think her child would try it because it was caribou, so she decided to tell the child, this is beef stew, and then wanted me to go along with it. And it's like, I'm not going to go along with that. This is no. It's just not good. It's not a part of what I'm here for. I'm not here to trick people and stuff like that. I want to share. I want to be as honest and true to myself and my culture, and our foods as much as possible, and be excited to be a part of the growth and what's happening. And I do believe it's going to be something that we're just getting started. We've been here for thousands of years, but we're just getting started when it comes to being out there in the public, beyond our own communities, because we're always about community, and now we're expanding our communities.
You go, Joseph. Yeah.
So where do I see Indigenous culinary in 10 years? That's a good question. Where do we see any of us in 10 years, right? So we just don't know what the outcomes will be. But thinking positively on it, it's I see, like what Tanya pointed out, that having our Indigenous ingredients on grocery store shelves, creating that network of having our own ingredients to go in, instead of going to Loblaws and buying California wild rice. Why don't we just buy wild rice from southern Manitoba or the Great Lakes region, right? So create like that natural, good, honest, true wild rice rather than cultivated wild rice. Like ways like that to bring those foods to market is one goal that I'm trying to reach, and there's a lot of laws prohibiting us from serving our food in a commercial setting. I encountered that with Kokum. And thankfully, like I found a few suppliers that would supply me some meats that were very similar to the taste that I grew up with in the wild. But I think that educating our youth is our best way forward to preserve our history, even just our culinary history, our storytelling history, just our traditions and our lifestyle, because they're so open now they're really eager to learn what we have. More so now during COVID, whenever we had some downtime, some family time to go out on the land. Back home, there was a resurgence of Indigenous youth going out on the land with their families and just picking stuff and learning. And there was a lot of people doing maple syrup this past year. A lot of family sugar camps are back up and running, so that was really good to see. And there was actually a lot of hunters out this year harvesting food for their own family. So like we got a moose this past season. We're going back out hopefully again soon. But educating our youth so that they can prosper in the next 10 years is where I see Indigenous food going. Because us, like Billy, Trudy, Tanya, and even you, sir, and with your voice and with all of our voices and our expertise behind us, we can teach our youth. We can teach our kids. We can teach anybody who's willing to listen and willing to sit down, just even over a cup of tea, right? So, and just learn our history. So, us teaching them is where I see our food and our culture thriving for the next 10 years.
Billy.
Yeah, I'll keep this quick because I know we need some time for some questions, but I think the future has a lot to do with accessibility. Joseph's 100% right that this isn't a one generation fight. This is like many generations, like generations after generations, and in every culture, I think youth is the future. I think we need to. I'm looking forward to that world that Tanya speaks to and Joseph spoke to about the having control of our own supplies and suppliers. I think there's some in-between stuff in terms of some of the processing, the abattoirs. I'd love to see Indigenous businesses start to go into those routes, because I think that could help us really start to fight some of the rules and regulations that have been imposed on not being able to serve wild game. I hope the future looks like a spot where we're able to really combat some of those issues. As an Indigenous person, we shouldn't have to choose between profit and representing ourselves. That shouldn't be a case. Without naming any names, I went to look at pricing 2 weeks ago for venison tenderloin and was told $90 for two. And this to me is just like it hurts. It's not even about anger. It's pain associated with the fact of how now another industry has capitalized off of what we respected and did for free, and what we respected and did with respect. And so I'd love to see some Indigenous entrepreneurs start to put some of those skill sets and some of those to use for the businesses, so we actually could be involved in the whole food life cycle from start to finish. And from the acquiring and hunting to the processing to the selling to Indigenous people to the Indigenous restaurants. I have an Indigenous restaurant opening up in next summer for Caldwell First Nation. And, this is the biggest thing is local is traditional, and traditional is what was revived regionally for us. And if our future accessibility wise is I want somebody to be able to wake up in this world in the future and say, I feel like Indigenous today, in the same way they would say, like, I feel like Italian, or I feel like Greek, and that they have accessible and they can go to any one of our restaurants and have it not be referenced as a fad, have it not be referenced as something new, and just have it deserve its own taste of place in this country. And I think that if we can start to be involved in those processes from start to finish, there's nothing that can't stop us. So that, in combination with what everybody else has said, that's a future that I really want us to be a part of.
Me too. And I feel like Indigenous today. Guys, let's all go for some Indigenous. Okay, let's jump straight into questions because we actually have quite a few. So you don't all have to answer these, but if anyone's inspired, just put your hand up or just unmute and go for it. So our first question is from Margaret, and she wants to know, where do you source your meat and fish, and as the seasons change? And does your cuisine change with the seasons?
I think all Indigenous people every season, right? We do eat seasonally, especially I guess here in the South. Trudy might be a little different up there, but yeah, we completely 100% eat with the season, and I'm excited to share that type of diet and that type of menu. Um, having my own spot now, but yeah, definitely. In terms of sourcing, it's not easy. We spend just as much time as we do in the kitchen. Um, and for me personally, I do know hunters in that, and I have no problem with serving that. But having opened my own spot now, like Billy, like you said, I do want to be health board certified. I am on a First Nations territory. I don't have to be, but I want to be because I know that those rules are there for everybody's safety, and I grew up with them, and I've been doing it for 26 years, and it's just second nature now. So why not, right? Why not? And I think that's opening something else up to First Nations communities to know that we have a quality standard, and why not, right? But it's a challenge working in those Indigenous things. So there are farms out there, they're bison farms, and yeah, like you can get rabbit and turkey and all these other things that we kind of forget about because a lot of times we just think about big game, but smaller, a little bit smaller stuff is more sustainable, and hopefully Canada starts looking at that. And but yeah, just go online, look around. There are farms where you can get most of what it is that you want, but like Billy said, you're paying top dollar, so that makes it challenging for how we present those foods, right? You're like, I want this much and I have this many people to serve, so how, a lot of it's that's where you do your job as a chef, where you how little of something can I use to feed people, and because you want everybody to experience that food. So anybody else jump in?
Yeah. No, I'm gonna jump in. Don't worry. So, yeah, making our food is very seasonable. Like it's like we live off the seasons. We live off the land. We change with the seasons, and our diets are based on what is available around us at any given time. So, and jumping on to what Chef Tanya and Chef Bill said about the accessibility of our foods in a commercial setting, it's ridiculously expensive. And going with that tradition about caribou, I use caribou once at the restaurant, and it cost me $98 a kilo for caribou, and that's the only time I use it because.
Mm-hmm.
And then I never use it again. So it was so expensive. But yeah, our diets are our food system is based off of very seasonable change. We will eat berries when the berries are ready. We'll eat corn when the corns are ready. We'll hunt any animals, any big game animals we would typically traditionally hunt throughout the whole years, throughout the whole seasons, given what we need. But more so, like all the fresh stuff was very seasonable in our diets. The berries, the legumes, like the roots and the birch syrup, the birch tree, like all of this stuff is very seasonable. So our diets were based on the seasons.
Awesome, Miigwech. Okay, I'll ask you another one. I think that this one's really interesting because so many of you are talking about sourcing. So we have a question from Kristen, and she said, Tanya mentioned wanting to see Indigenous foods in grocery stores. How do you feel about non-Indigenous people cooking Indigenous food? Is it different from non-Chinese person cooking a Chinese food or a non-Italian cooking Italian food? And she's just curious about what the attitude is about this.
I believe all of us have something to say on that, right? So,
yeah, I imagine you would. So.
Yeah, I always just go by never. It's all about, how we talk about cultural appropriation. There's also a thing called culinary appropriation, right? So I would never cook a full-blown Chinese meal and call it a Chinese dinner because that's just, for me, that's just wrong, or an Italian meal, right? So I would say and then Italian-inspired dinner that I created, right? So because I got inspired by using those ingredients to create that meal, so then I got inspired. But I would never open up an Italian restaurant, call myself an Italian chef. Right?
I had to agree with Joseph. I love cooking other cuisines, but it's just like I mentioned earlier, if someone wants to hire me to do some catering and stuff like that, and they want some First Nations food, that's not my part to do it. unless if there's a situation where we can't find somebody else from another chef from one of the First Nations communities to do that food, then it's asking for their permission and asking and maybe their recipe and them teaching me how to do it and then me acknowledging where this came from. So I think it's really important to recognize that. But yeah, when it comes to cooking other cuisines, I mean, I want to learn all the cuisines. I want to, I want to be a Vietnamese chef and that sort of stuff, but I'm not going to promote I might look Vietnamese at times to some people, but I'm not going to promote myself as that. And I'm not going to take that away from them because that's a part of their culture and their experience and their traditions and their lives, their stories. So.
Yeah. I agree 100% as well with everything that's been said. I think there's a clear difference here. We never want to strip somebody's love of food away from them, but there's a difference between what you're cooking for yourself and what you're trying to commercialize off of. And I've seen a big interest in Indigenous food where there's lots of non-Indigenous people cooking Indigenous food because there's a big interest in it. But if you're not Indigenous, cooking Indigenous food, I will argue that it may not be Indigenous food. And part of there's one thing to learn a recipe, but we're not recipe people. Like we're culture people, like sharing our culture through. So if you want to cook an Indigenous inspired meal at your house that you've seen a chef like create or that you've done the knowledge behind, amazing. That's exactly what we want. Just don't go try to market yourself and capitalize off another culture. That's where it's wrong. And I think we have the power as individuals for every person to be able to ask themselves why they want to do what they're about to do. And if your first thing is profit, it's the wrong answer. So especially in the culinary world, it's the wrong answer. So it's from these perspectives. The other thing that I would say is what work have you done to do that Indigenous meal? You know, I always say that I don't think I have very few meals I do, I've created 100% on myself. These are past histories and passed down in stories. And I've learned from every chef on this panel. I've seen things they've done. I've seen different perspectives on it. The truth is, as Indigenous people, our history and what we know of it is changing every day because it's becoming more accessible to what we know. So a lot of what we're doing is changing every day. Do your knowledge, do your history, and find out what it is you're trying to represent before you just put it for sale.
Yeah, I don't really know how I feel on the topic because I know, like, you sit back and look, like, 70% of the food that people are serving anyways did come from North and South America. So it's all, I'm just kidding. It's all appropriate. But yeah, like, why do we even got to ask that? You know what I mean? Like, we just, Indigenous food at this point is too important and it kind of hurts sometimes, but Indigenous people have to get used to the fact that we're not the only people that are going to be eating our food anymore, and look at it with a mind frame of helping, right, and helping this world that needs so much help right now, sustaining its food because our current growing processes are not sustainable, and it's really going to affect us in the future. So there does have to be that medium ground, where people are using Indigenous ingredients, but maybe, like I said, they said that maybe we're just not referring to it as, it does hurt when you see a non-Native person open an Indigenous restaurant and you're like, oh, because, there's so many Indigenous people and you just know that so much isn't represented there because our food is more about food. It's culture, it's spirituality, it's our way of life. And when it's not done in a respectful way, that definitely hurts.
Miigwech, we're down to the 1 minute mark. I want to say again, thank you so much to all of our panelists. I think this is such an important conversation that goes far beyond food and the culinary experience. It's about our Indigenous stories and voices and how we're uplifting each other and the spaces that we're claiming. So miigwech to each and every one of you, for all of you out there who are watching, and thank you for Indigenous Tourism Ontario for the support. And again, thank you so much to each and every one of you. Bamapi, and also guys, look up these chefs and find out where the restaurants are and go and support them. That's really the main point. So I hope to see you guys all out there experiencing Indigenous culinary cuisine. Miigwech. Bamapi.